Hey guys, Kimani here, the voice and face behind hauling this together and Golden with J. For today's video, I'll be showing you guys how to make this amazing Princess Barbie doll cake. So if you want to see how I do that, keep on watching. Okay guys, so I'm using 3 layers for this cake, an 8-inch, a 7-inch, and a 6-inch. So first I'm securing my cake on my cake board using a little bit of frosting, and then I'm just going to put some frosting in between my layers. My 8 and my 7-inch layers are leveled. You can also, cut them in half if you want, but I didn't want to. So I decided to do an 8, a 7, and a 6 so that there would be a gradual decrease in size so that I wouldn't have much carving to do. So I'm just putting some frosting in between my layers. For my 6-inch layer, however, I will not level the top, and you will see why soon. I want that dome shape at the top so that I don't have to do much carving either. So I'm smoothing out my frosting, and I'm going to put this in my fridge to set for about 30 minutes to an hour so that my frosting is completely set. Now I'm just checking the height of my doll to make sure it's good, and I'm adding some saran wrap to the bottom half that will be inside my cake so that I can make it food safe. Now I'm using a cookie cutter to just see the size of the doll, like the width, and I'm finding the perfect place to cut out the space for my doll to sit. Okay guys, so as you can see, I deliberately added my doll at the higher end of my cake where my dome is, so that when I cut my cake, the back part will seem like it's flowing down from her body, kind of like the way how a dress actually fits. So just keep that in mind. If you don't do that, then you can fix it with carving. Now all I'm doing right now is just taking off all the excess cake from the top so that it kind of meets at her waist. And as you can see, I'm not carving the bottom half of this dress because we already decreased it gradually. So I'm just adding my crumb coat so that I can work on my cake and make it as smooth as I possibly can. When you're carving, remember to take off less than more, because you can always take off more, but it's harder to put on after you've taken off too much. So I'm bringing my frosting all the way past the cake to my actual doll, and I'm using a acetate sheet to just smooth it out because it's a irregular shape, and so using my usual frosting smoother would probably make my job harder. So that's all I'm using right now, and I'm taking it all the way up to my doll so that there is no gap. Okay, so ensure that from the front your doll is an even A-line. Let's just pause to appreciate the shape. And at the front, it should be a little more straight than it is at the back. The back has a bigger curve. Like if you look where the center of the doll is, you'll see that. And the back of the cake goes up to where the back of her spine would be, and the front of the cake goes to where her navel is. This is kind of more like a natural way for the dress to fall. So now I'm just rolling out some fondant I will use to cover the dress section of my cake, and I'm making that a slit in the middle, just an X, so that I can go over the doll and like place it over the dress as opposed to me wrapping it around her, if that makes sense. So I'm going above and going over, as you can see, instead of me wrapping it around, because I just thought this would have been easier. Now this first layer does not have to be perfect. I repeat, it does not have to be perfect. So it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. You don't have to necessarily cover all of it if you can't. If the fondant tears, it's okay, because we're going to add a different layer of fondant, or layers of fondant. So whatever flaws are underneath will be hidden anyways. So yeah, keep in mind also that fondant stretches. So if a part of the fondant seems shorter, like by the time you smooth it out, it will, it will stretch and cover all of your cake. So now I'm just making some ribbons using my ribbon cutter. One side is like wavy and the other side is straight, because I'm going to add some wave-like textures using my balling tool at the end. So I'm just cutting my strips. I'm adding some lines that, you know, fabric kind of has textures and lines and whatever. So I'm just adding that. I'm making it as random as I can. I'm just using my veining tool to do that, and then I'm using my balling tool now to add some ruffle kind of texture to the end. I didn't want it to be too ruffly, but I wanted to add some, you know, flow into the dress, because I mean, fabric flows unless it's like, I don't know, leather, which it is not. So I'm just continuing with that. I had a bunch of ribbons that I had cut, so I'm just showing you my technique. You can add as much or as little ruffles as you'd like, or you can take out the lines if you feel like that's better for whatever design you want to do, but I'm just showing you what I did. So now I'm making like a triangular outline at the front of my dress where I'll have like the opening of the dress. It will make sense in a second. So I'm roughly doing this. You can use a ruler to make sure it's equal if you want. And I'm just going to brush some water on the front section there where my triangle is, so that my second layer of fondant sticks to it. So that triangular line that I made is basically like an outline for me to know where to cut, so that, you know, I don't necessarily waste too much time or fondant covering the areas that won't be shown anyways. So I'm just using my knife. Eventually I'll switch to a scissors because that was way easier for me to cut off the excess. My kitchen was hot and it was a humid day, so my fondant was a little bit glossy, but this worked in my favor because at some point I didn't have to use too much water to attach the second layer of fondant. And as I can see, like as I said before, like I started using the scissors. So I'm just literally filling in that triangular section at the front of my cake, which will be the opening of my dress. Now I'm adding an ombre pink finish to like the sides and the back, but I'm just going straight across. Now for the front, like the starting point of the pink, I folded the fondant under so that you don't see like the raw edge. So it's kind of like a seam. I think that's what it would be if you're a tailor or a dressmaker or anything like that, or you're into, you know, design, clothing design, then like correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's a seam where you'd stitch to get rid of the raw edges. So yeah, and because it's ruffled where my my ribbons didn't go from one end to the other, I just continued where it broke off, and I mean, it worked. So to get the ombre effect, I started off with the pink that I wanted, and then I just kept adding white so that it would, you know, get lighter. Not rocket science, but I guess you could call it art. So that's all I'm doing. Like the top pink is basically like off-white at this point, and that's it for the base of the dress. I'm just kind of like closing off that seam where the bodice would meet the flowing part of the dress. I don't know dress anatomy, but you know what I mean. Now I'm making the corset part of it, and I'm literally just cutting out like a half heart shape for the breast area, and I'm adding some shortening to her body because it will stick better since her body is plastic. You know, water would probably run off or whatever. So I'm just adding some shortening so that my fondant will stick to her body, and then I'm going to add on my fondant that I cut out just now, trying to smooth it out and cut where I can so that, you know, the assembly process is somewhat easier. So cut the front area if it will make more sense for you to wrap the dress around her. I'm just cutting right where her spine is, because that's where like a zipper or the buttons or Velcro would be. This is me trying to figure out how I'll set her hand so that I know how to cut her underarms where the corset would be, and I'm literally cutting it on her body so that it fits the way I want it to fit. If I had done it on the mat, I would have needed to do a template, which was a lot of work. Now I'm just adding some purple accents, so I'm adding her belt and like a pipe into the bosom area of her. It sounds weird to say bosom, the bosom area of her corset. I'm just going to use my veining tool after this to add some texture to the belt, so it doesn't just seem like it's a a tube of purple that goes around her waist, and it's actually like a part of the dress. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah, so I'm blending it in. Anything that I'm attaching at this point, I'm just using some water or shortening, like that's it. So this is where I'm just adding the piping around the top of her corset. It's weird to say bosom. So I'm just using my veining tool to make sure that it's somewhat blended, so it doesn't seem like I just added a strip of fondant that doesn't belong there. I'm using a combination of tools and my fingers to just get everything to be one. So now I'm using my pearl mold, the smallest pearl mold that's in the set, and I'm going to make her necklace. This is completely optional. I just wanted everything to seem like it was intentional. I used water for this, and I should have used shortening. I don't know what was going on with me, but it started sliding, and I think you'll see me fixing it at some point. But save yourself the trouble. If you're going to add a necklace, just use shortening, because her body is plastic and water doesn't really stick well to plastic. This is me trying to figure out the hand situation again, and I think I did something that looks somewhat decent. I'm just combing her hair, which is also optional, and I'm also adding a fondant bow to her hair so that it matches her dress. Well, more like the accents that are on her dress, which is purple. Simple bow, and as I said, it's definitely optional. Like, I was probably just being too extra at this point. But yeah, so that's it. And I'm adding like the ribbon end to the ribbon, the bow. So I just added some toothpick between her bun and her head. It's going to be hidden. I just wanted to hold everything together. And after I put on the ribbon end, I added some water around the toothpick so that the bow would actually stick in place. And that's it. This is the final product. I hope you guys like this video. If you do, then don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Show your love down below. And yeah, that's it for this week's video. I'll see you guys next week with another video. Until then, stay golden. Before you go though, check out my 2 videos that are on the screen right now. Show some love. Thank you. No, bye.